Good morning, Commissioners, Chief McDonald, Mr. Sibley, Madam Secretary, Acting Inspector General Florence Yu, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is November 26, 2024. It is 9:31 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Suthers, Shields, and Kalancha are present, and we have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the Board Secretary no later than the day preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We'll dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be a speaker in the room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to be present at the meetings, hear the presentations, dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there's a need for the board to carry out the public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. There are 2 agenda items that have to require corrections. Consent agenda item 3D should read BPC number 24-310. And the closed session item number 3, the officer-involved shooting number 001-24, will be carried over to the December 10th agenda. With that, we will move on to item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police. Chief McDonald.
Morning, President Suthers, Vice President Shields, Commissioners, Acting Inspector General Yu, and City Attorney De La Guerra, as well as Mr. Sibley. Good to be here with you all today. Today I'll be discussing significant events from the previous week, providing a crime update, and discussing our personnel strength. On November 22nd, about 13:59 hours, Northeast Division Uniform Patrol officers responded to a radio call of a male with mental illness experiencing suicidal ideations and armed with a handgun in front of 5007 North La Rota Avenue. Upon arrival, the officers observed the subject, later identified as Carlos Casillas, on the front porch of the residence. Officers remained next to their police vehicles and attempted to communicate with Casillas, who then produced a handgun. Casillas then discharged his handgun, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. Following this, Casillas moved out of the officer's line of sight, and additional resources were requested to the area. Shortly thereafter, Casillas reemerged to the front of the residence, but refused to comply with orders to surrender. With the assistance of Metropolitan Division K-9, and after a K-9 contact, Casillas was ultimately taken into custody. During the detention, it was discovered Casillas had sustained gunshot wounds to his upper torso as a result of the OIS. Casillas was immediately transported to a local hospital where he was treated for his wounds and listed in stable condition. No officers or community members were injured during the incident. A 9mm semi-auto handgun and empty magazine were located near the front porch of the residence, and 4 discharged 9mm cartridge casings were located within the officer-involved shooting crime scene. The firearm, magazine, and cartridge casings were booked into evidence. Force Investigation Division responded to the scene and are investigating the incident. Year to date, we've had 25 officer-involved shootings, and comparing that to this time last year, we had 31, for an increase of 19.4%. We had a vehicle pursuit resulting in a fatality on November 23rd, about 13:30 hours. Uniformed patrol officers from West Valley were monitoring a stolen vehicle that was reported stolen from Simi Valley. While monitoring the vehicle, a male and a female entered the vehicle and drove away from the location. Officers began to broadcast that they were following a stolen vehicle and requested additional resources. During the following, the vehicle pulled to the curb and the female passenger exited the vehicle. The vehicle then accelerated away from the officers and a vehicle pursuit was initiated. The suspect vehicle traveled southbound on Mason Ave and collided with the right side of a Tesla that was traveling westbound on Sataquoy Street. The force of the collision caused the Tesla to spin, striking an eastbound vehicle on Sataquoy. The suspect vehicle continued southbound, ultimately colliding with another vehicle traveling eastbound before overturning. Tragically, the driver of the Tesla sustained traumatic injuries and was pronounced deceased at the scene. All other involved parties suffered minor injuries and were transported to local hospitals for treatment. The suspect was taken into custody and subsequently arrested for 187 PC homicide. He was booked into jail. The Multidisciplinary Collision Investigation Team, or MCIT, responded to the scene and is leading the investigation into the incident. We had an officer injured, a motorcycle officer, on November 21st at approximately 1700 hours. A West Traffic Division motor officer was involved in the collision while traveling northbound on the 405 freeway. The officer was lane splitting between the carpool lane and the number 1 lane of traffic when a vehicle in the carpool lane attempted to change lanes into the number 1. During the lane change, the vehicle collided with the motor officer, causing the officer to strike the rear of a secondary vehicle traveling in the number 1 lane. The impact ejected the officer from the motorcycle, causing him to land on the roadway. Emergency personnel responded, and the officer was transported to UCLA Medical Center for treatment. Thankfully, he was treated for non-life-threatening injuries and was later released. He's expected to make a full recovery. Some good news on Saturday, November 23rd. I, along with Commissioner Calanche, had the honor of attending the graduation ceremony for the August 2024 cadet class. This event was a reminder of the positive impact the LAPD cadet program has on our youth and our communities. The graduating cadets aged between 13 and 17 have demonstrated incredible commitment to leadership, academic excellence, ethical decision-making, and community service over the course of their training. The ceremony highlighted not only their hard work, but also the vital role the program plays in guiding young people toward brighter futures. It was great to see their families, friends, and mentors come together in celebration, reinforcing the strong bonds between the department and the community. These cadets represent the next generation of leaders, and it was a privilege to be able to help celebrate their achievements. This next one is a very commendable incident here that I'll share. On November 6th at 9:00 p.m., 2100 hours, officers from Northeast Patrol Division responded to a call regarding a suicide attempt at the Avenue 60 bridge over the LA River. The subject, a 17-year-old suffering from autism and PTSD, had taken 30 sleeping pills and was perched on the bridge's ledge 60 feet above the dry riverbed. As the officers arrived, the suspect climbed onto the outside of the ledge, standing precariously on small footholds while his mother looked on. The officers quickly acted, grabbing the subject as he began to dangle from the bridge. Despite the subject resisting and punching them, the officers held on. A citizen passing by saw what was occurring and immediately went to assist the officers. With the assistance of the bystander, they managed to be able to pull the subject to safety. He was transported to the hospital and placed on a mental evaluation hold, but just want to commend the officers for their quick thinking and courage, as well as the importance of community support in crisis situations. This citizen who jumped in and offered his help to the officers probably made the difference between a tragedy and hopefully this individual getting the help he needs now. We also have a missing person case that has gotten a lot of attention locally and nationally. On Friday, November 8th, 23-year-old Hana Kobayashi missed her connecting flight from LAX to New York, which the investigation determined was intentional. Over the next few days, she maintained contact with her family and was active on Instagram. However, the family last heard from Hannah on November 11th. After receiving concerning text messages and losing further contact, her family traveled to LA on November 13th and filed a missing person report. On November 15th, our missing persons unit assumed investigative responsibility. Detectives have been diligently reviewing video surveillance and employing various investigative techniques to locate Hannah, while her family has continued their personal search efforts. Tragically, on November 24th, during the search for his daughter, Hannah's father, Ryan Kobayashi, was found deceased. Preliminary findings indicate his death was by suicide. Our hearts go out to the Kobayashi family during this unimaginable time of grief. We remain fully committed to locating Hannah and supporting the family as they navigate their way through this tragedy. We had a robbery series. Some good arrests were made in November. We identified a concerning robbery series targeting Chase banks, restaurants, CVS stores, and pizza parlors across the Mission, West Valley, and Devonshire areas. To date, 9 robberies were attributed to this series. Robbery Homicide Division led the investigation. Detectives identified the suspect, Eric Acosta, through his vehicle, a 2017 Land Rover, which was linked to multiple crime scenes. On November 19th, the coordinated efforts by our detectives from RHD, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitations, and the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force led to Acosta's arrest in Van Nuys Division. His vehicle was also recovered and impounded. Acosta's criminal history is extensive and includes 6 felony convictions. Notably, Acosta served a 16-year state prison sentence for robbery and was recently released from CDCR in September of this year. Just 2 months later, his alleged crime spree began. I want to thank our dedicated investigators and partner agencies for their efforts in apprehending this career criminal. Their collaboration and commitment have played a vital role in ensuring the safety and well-being of our community. Over the past week, a series of 4 street robberies occurred in Southeast, Southwest, and Olympic areas, all sharing a similar suspect description and method of operation. The suspect in this series was identified by detectives as Dominic Bowden. In each case, Bowden approached women on the street and made an agreement for sexual acts. Once inside his vehicle, he produced a handgun, using it to either strike the victims or threaten them, ultimately robbing them of cash and personal property. On November 25th, Southwest Vice officers successfully located and took Bowden into custody without further incident. Once again, dedication and commitment of our officers to protecting the community led to the apprehension of this dangerous person, ensuring that he's no longer a threat to the public. Crime overall for the week ending November 24th, we've seen a notable decrease in both persons and property crimes across the city, reflecting the ongoing effort of our officers to create safer neighborhoods. Specifically, combined persons and property crimes have dropped 12.3% over the past 4 weeks, with a reduction of 1,205 offenses compared to the previous period. The trend in homicide has been steadily decreasing since March of this year, with 259 homicides reported citywide through November 23rd. That's a 13.7% decrease compared to the same time last year, and a more substantial drop of 27.9% compared to 2022. Notably, gang-related homicides have seen a significant reduction. 92 of this year's homicides, or 35.6%, are gang-related, down from 143 in 2023, which was 47%, and 195 in 2022, 54%. This reduction highlights the success of our targeted interventions and community partnerships. The number of victims shot has also shown a positive trend, with a decrease of 18.2% compared to 2023 and a 25.3% compared to 2022. While there were no changes in the number of victims shot over the past 4 weeks, certain areas have seen notable increases. Specifically, Newton saw a 175% increase, which was 7 additional victims. In Southeast, a 50% increase, or 4 victims. We're committed to addressing these spikes through continued outreach and crime prevention efforts. Aggravated assaults have decreased by 7.2% in the last 4 weeks. However, there were areas that have experienced also significant increases, being Northeast Hollywood and North Hollywood. Saw increases in ag assaults ranging from just under 12% to 46%. These areas will be prioritized for further investigation and community engagement to address these incidents. While robberies have increased slightly, just 0.1%, there are areas that have experienced more significant rises. Wilshire, for example, saw an 80% increase in robbery from 20 the previous 4-week period to 34. Central area also saw a almost 24% increase from 51 to 63. A concerning trend in robberies is the increased use of firearms, with 23% of all robberies involving a firearm. We're closely monitoring these trends and ensuring resources are in place to prevent further escalation. The good news continues with burglaries down 10.4% over the last 4 weeks. Both commercial burglaries and residential burglaries have seen reductions of 16% and 6.7%, respectively. The decrease is a testament, again, to our crime prevention strategies and the vigilance of the community working along with us. Motor vehicle thefts have dropped by 12% in the last 4 weeks. However, we continue to see areas of concern, particularly in Devonshire, 77th Wilshire, where thefts have increased slightly. The trend in stolen vehicle continues to show Kia, Hyundai, and Chevrolet vehicles are among the top targets. We remain focused on addressing this issue with enhanced patrol and community awareness initiatives and working with the vehicle manufacturers to install new software updates to target these vehicles to prevent the thefts that have been highly publicized on social media. Finally, our personnel strength as of November 25th is 8,786 sworn personnel, and our civilian personnel staffing is 2,627. We have 380 reserve officers. Thank you for the opportunity. That concludes my report today, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chief. And I'd like to, again, commend the officers at the November 6th attempt suicide at the 6th Street Bridge. Just incredible act of bravery, and that they were able to save that young man's life. Also, I'd like to commend the investigation on the robbery series arrest recently, and the fact that you've mentioned this crime prevention, working with the community to be engaged to prevent similar activity across the city. Happy you can make it to the cadet program over the weekend. That was very good. And also, I noticed that you attended Mark May's Project Blue mentoring program as well. I've had the opportunity to visit that mentoring program, and it's home of the Watts Rams, and it's doing very well, so I'm sure you were well received, and thank you for going to that event.
Thank you, sir.
I have no other questions or comments, and I'll defer to Vice President Shields.
Thank you, President Southers, and thank you, Chief, for the report. I'll echo President Southers with regards to the Northeast Patrol officers for their great work with the suicide attempt, and in particular also commend the Good Samaritan who stopped to assist them and the individual. And it's very heartbreaking to hear about the other, the missing persons case, the developments there, and especially as we enter the holiday season and knowing that suicide attempts and suicide rises, I'm hoping that people really take the opportunity to get the help that they need, and thankful that the officers are able to assist in that way. And I know, having been on the commission, I've seen many times where the officers have stepped in to actually stop a suicide, and it's not often recognized. So thank you for that. And also glad to hear that the motor officer has non-life-threatening injuries and will be okay. So thank you for that. One area that I really want to focus on, Chief, which I have greater concern about, is really the tragic death of a motorist who was killed by someone fleeing from law enforcement. And we've seen this kind of time and time again, unfortunately. And I want just kind of more, and it won't be today, but I want maybe a more fulsome presentation at some point to allow us to have more oversight in that world. I want to understand really the training that officers undergo in terms of when to initiate a pursuit, when to not initiate to stop a pursuit, how we the department actually conducts reviews of pursuits to determine whether or not they were in policy or out of policy and what consequences come from that. And any additional tech, whether, I've heard of, some tech that allows you to track from a distance, or even getting eyes on supervisors so that they see what is happening in real time and can help to navigate. And again, I understand these often the tragedy happens within just seconds of of a pursuit, but I just really want to make sure that the department has all the tools that it needs to do this as safely as possible. And I want to make sure our policies and everything are in place to try to avoid as much as possible these types of tragic outcomes. And I also understand that it can't be a blanket rule that officers can't do any pursuits, because then that gives a green light to everyone to know to run from law enforcement. So I understand all of the balancing that has to happen, but I really want us to be discussing this more fulsome so that we have more insight as to what the department is doing.
That'd be great. We'll do that.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you. And actually, my comments were focused on the same thing Commissioner Shields just mentioned. Just concerned. We don't want these types of pursuits to lead to tragedies. But yeah, would love a presentation. And actually, my questions were more about like what the process is, learning about the process of when we retreat, when we stop a pursuit. So I think it would be beneficial.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 2 on the agenda, public comment period. Madam Secretary, please call the first speaker.
The first speaker is Hassan Tran.
Good morning, Los Angeles Police Department and Police Chief and everybody. Today, November 26, 2024, my message very seriously sending to elect President Mr. Donald Trump and all police department all around USA and all police officers and all U.S. military, and all USA veterans, and all FBI, and all law enforcement, and all CIA. Every day you going to work for U.S. government, very important. I want please all of you, remember my name is Hassan Tran. I love all of you, and I want all of you love me too. Then all of you will doing better job for U.S. government to protect all American people and all millionaire and all billionaire people. We all dry and safe. Please help me give this information to all American people and all human rights all around the world. Will be changed better for all of us. God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Betty Lay.
Okay, can everybody hear me today?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
I'd like to speak on Chief's report, agenda items, and public comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Well, first off, I have to congratulate our chief. I'm very excited for him to be our new chief. He's an amazing guy, and I support all the donations on the agenda. And again, I would like the chief to request an internal review from the Board of Rights so that we can He can see that the captain and lieutenant in question has done nothing wrong, and they are reinstated. I thank you very much. I pray everybody has a blessed and thankful Thanksgiving. Stay safe and healthy. I yield the rest of my time.
The next speaker is Chief Manuelito.
How, motherfucker? How do we explain this foundations of donations without a total tally of what monies is flowing lucratively into the business of the police department? You know, as the gentleman pointed out earlier, God bless Donald Trump, he's right. We're seeing the immediate effect of reform in government, and that's what we need. We need to shake, stir up, and prevent this injustice of humanity to force me, a simple man with a simple plan, not to hear the bullshit from the pro temp who says her oil refinery friends are okay in her donations. Well, she needs to remember that Brentwood and that house of Brentwood, California, that Steve Soberoff had a lot. Troubling effects to that. David O. Carter pointed it out. Stop the fucking stealing. That's what part of the report of the chief was. I got nothing against J.P. McDonald. I voted for him back then when that little scumbag criminal he was running against got into office and then kissed the ass of all those 4 or 5 elected officials in the board of supervisors who put a proton.me harassment against me. You know, it's crazy how people in government can use their tools or their strategies that are ineffective to stop me in my First Amendment 42 U.S.C. 1983. And under the color of all 18 and 18, 242 and 245, and protected by Bain Act 52.1, to put on the record, you dirty niggers, stop the corruption. Stop the allegations of falsifying reports. And by the way, who the fuck puts a 13-year-old child in the arms of pedophiles like the cadet program where you fuck children? You fuck children in a cadet program and you still got it going. I want some women oversight in that, or maybe some LGBT queer like Herman for the record, and his woof, 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 woof security dog to stop this fucking madness. Men and women, stop fucking children, for God's sake. Save America. Thank you.
Caller ending 1264.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes, Chief McDonald. You evidently had a good mentor, Bratton. He is someone that you could feel in the community. I mean, you can feel that he was out to enforce the law. What we have now is total lawlessness in our community. I mean, we've had your police officers condone a blocking of a residential street for a saint of a drug dealer, and they just kept saying we have permits, and they would not show the permit. You have to do this. They gave me the runaround. I have all the pictures. I mean, it is a disgrace. Foothill Division. I mean, they sit around and I don't know what they do. I would like to see how they're helping our community, because our community is destroyed. I mean, we have nothing but lawlessness. We have people blocking the sidewalks, huge, huge vendors with canopies, tables, and chairs. The only thing that's allowed on the sidewalk is one vendor with a cart. That's it, and a permit. None of these people have that. And the police go out there and they do nothing, and they basically encourage them to continue their criminality on our streets, and that only invites more criminality. So we have the broken window syndrome all over our community, and the police are part and parcel to this whole thing. Also, we've had somebody that was shot in San Fernando inside AutoZone in the head. Obviously, San Fernando and CD7 Pacoima, the gang members, evidently have some kind of thing where they're allowing the gang members to cross the lines and do activity in San Fernando and vice versa in Pacoima. So obviously the SBI needs to get here. So I hope you start doing something about these things and cleaning up our community and making it safe, because it's not right now, because we're in danger. So I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you.
The next speaker, William Spayman. William Spayman. Spayman.
Thank you. The reason I'm coming here today is that... Sir, please speak into the mic. Okay. Is this better? Yes. Yeah, it's better. So I'm coming down here today because since June of 2017, I've been in a situation which I think qualifies as elder abuse. It entails a tenant that lives above me, and the landlord whom I asked him to do something about it and said would not be done. And what this person has been doing, the tenant has been attacking with noise. He, all hours of the night and day, stomps on the floor. He slams his toilet seat. He bought some kind of machine that buzzes at all times. I want to shift something to something else that's related, which is what I understand, there is a unit in the LAPD in headquarters that what they do is they protect elders against finance. In other words, getting them, stealing their money. The second one is physical, which is people get black and blues. And that's what these gentlemen do, and ladies do. They protect them. But the last one is, according to 368C, is the one that has to do with emotional stress. This has been going on for a very long time. And I wanted to bring this to you because you have the people in black and whites, you have the people handling the money, but as far as I understand, there is no unit similar to the finance that there is with emotional abuse. So that's just open game. And I wanted to, I brought some of these for, I've done more than 1,000 of these things. I early on learned that I was supposed to get logs. I have in my kit meters for the how loud this is. This goes for 130 max, and I have recorded 126 decibels with this. So I'm mainly here for the reason that it just doesn't seem there is a coordinated effort to look into the elder thing.
And the number one thing that I'm concerned with, I even had a couple of ideas myself in this regard. I think there are a lot of people who commit
So, sir,
suicide.
this officer's going to take your information so we can look into it.
Oh, okay, very good, very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, next we
This,
have P. Miller.
Being in democracy when it's working along, it's always thrilling to me. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
All items?
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Police Commissioners and Mayor Bass for appointing Chief Jim McDonnell. His knowledge, integrity, leadership, and community-based policing advocacy makes him the right chief at the right time. He is already well-known and respected in the many diverse communities throughout Los Angeles, and has always been regarded highly by the rank and file. His relationships locally and globally will be a huge asset as LA prepares to host the World Cup and major events. And regarding recruiting, knowing this chief will be at the helm is probably already having a positive effect on future recruiting. But commissioners, let us continue to make sure it is quality-driven candidates, not quota-driven. The best way to honor the women and others who came first and broke barriers is to make sure those who follow in their footsteps are equally qualified and able to live up to their predecessors' accomplishments. Support the donations on the agenda today. And we are also very thankful for the passage of Prop 36 and a new DA. LA is overwhelmingly ready for DA Hochman to be an aggressive but fair prosecutor. Would like to also advocate for the return of the neighborhood prosecutor program out of the city attorney's office. Understand that program has been dismantled or not functioning as it used to. The neighborhood prosecutor's working relationship with divisional senior leads was extremely effective and should be re-implemented. Regarding the media, we know facts are often selectively reported or omitted. Reporters have lost the trust of so many. So commissioners in chief would encourage you not to be shy about presenting the facts or correcting inaccurate reports through social media or on the website with your own public, unedited briefing. And commissioners, as you continue on, there needs to be a conversation, an assurance to the law-abiding citizens that foreign criminals who have entered this country illegally to do harm to this country or its citizens, or anyone who steals and exploits children for human trafficking as they cross into this country unaccompanied, that is not okay, and LA will not allow this. If these reports are true, any political leader who has a problem supporting enforcement, they need to find another profession. And Chief McDonnell, welcome back home to the LAPD.
The next speaker, Raul Macias.
Good morning, Chief Police McDonald, Commissioners. I'd like to know, Chief, when are you going to move against this individual that came to move in 5134 Raphael Street, who I believe is a vigilante, who has hurt or murdered Sean Evan Buer? He's driving his car. The license plate is in question, and also the tags are 2 years old. And he lives in Sean's room now. This is really creepy stuff. He's an Asian, and I believe he retaliated against Sean because of the inaction of Northeast Division and not apprehending Sean Evan Buer, who I talked to the Sergeant Saldana this morning regarding Sean Evan Buer. There's a missing persons on him, and he's going to look into that because, for all I know, he murdered him. He buried his body somewhere because he does have his vehicle. That car, I've seen it for years. I live with Sean. He was abusing our Korean landlady, raping her. I testified about a gang rape on Friday the 13th, and he was abusing her. And this gentleman, who I believe is in law enforcement, was watching these meetings these testimony that I gave, and he took retaliation and became a vigilante, an avenger, and he killed this guy. And I saw the assault of Callan, who was also he's also German, like Sean, and I believe they're white supremacists who wanted to get the house, and they got a restraining order on me through Young. They persuaded her to kick me out of the house on a restraining order, which is all bogus. And I saw his assault take place, Chief. Myself personally, I was in the street, and Mike and Nance on Mission Boulevard. I'm sure you might have been in that area before. And the police department is right down the street, a couple of blocks down on Fremont. Callan came in, he was hurt. And I think this vigilante took him to South Pasadena to kill him there. And he was stumbling. He came in, he was trying to get under the table where I was sleeping. And I said, motherfucker, what are you doing? What do you want, man? And then I said, oh, shit, it's Callan. And he was wounded. He goes, you look familiar. You look familiar. And he couldn't verbalize because I think he might have been stabbed in the neck. And he went stumbling and he fell into the courtyard of the city council office. And an Asian cop came out saying, Raul, is that you across the street? I said, yeah, what the fuck are you calling 911 for? Because of the fact that they were covering up this crime. That Asian cop at South Pasadena has never been identified. He was wild-eyed, disheveled. He must have been running after Callan. I think the individual that's living at 5134 set this up, this murder and his cover-up. That's why he moved in, to get anybody in that house who had to do with the rape of this woman.
Thank you.
Next, we
Yeah,
have
real quickly,
Amy's.
before we move on, I know this person has been here multiple times, but can I make sure that the department and the Inspector General are aware of all the allegations that he's been making? Thank you.
Okay, next, we have Amy's iPhone.
Hi, I'll speak on all items and the
3 minutes.
public comment. Okay. Firstly, I'm concerned with the money you're receiving. There's no transparency as to the contributions you're getting. I'm thinking that you must be getting something through your foundations, through the Scientology organization that's located on L. Ron Hubbard Way. It's obvious because something's going on where you have them on your CPABs and they are pushing influence on you. Especially when we saw the two girls that escaped, the Godinez girls. They were trying to escape but they didn't have the verbalization skills in the Northeast Division to say what was actually going on. This is a terrible child trafficking cult. They espouse to say that they are against and working with other organizations to fight against trafficking, as they invited Pam Bondi, the supposed elected, or the president-elect has us wanting her to be on his Department of Justice as the Attorney General. They do the opposite because people have escaped this cult and have been telling their stories and no one's believing it. It's just like, would you not believe a person that escaped the Holocaust and is giving testimonials on the U.S. Shoah project done by Steven Spielberg? There were two people that escaped in April of 1944, Rudolf Verba and Alfred Wetzler. They went and they escaped their atrocities and they gave testimony to Hungary, which they were then able to stop the deportations. And but unfortunately, something happened where that didn't happen. The Jews were still deported from Hungary. But the fact is that you didn't believe these girls, or you didn't do anything. You didn't follow your protocol. Something's going on in your division that you're not saving these children. You might as well have had the sign that was above Auschwitz when you went and you gave the girls back to their father. The sign was Arbeit macht frei, which means work makes free. But what the problem is that you didn't believe the girls. You didn't follow your protocol. You might as well have been returning them back to a concentration camp. Now, when are you going to have your Valkyrie moment, all of you, how can you look at yourself in the mirror knowing what you've done to children? And lastly, I want you to continue to not dismiss the Hana Kobayashi case. Trust the family. They came to look for her, and don't dismiss it that she voluntarily went missing. I yield back my time.
The next speaker, Matios Kadan.
My name is Matthew Skidana with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I think it's interesting and noteworthy that, you know, some callers who are routinely supportive of the police and praising Jim McDonnell are bringing up the narrative of foreign criminals. And I think we should consider that as a harbinger of narratives and tone to come. Jim McDonnell is inextricable from targeting undocumented communities. That's just the reality of, you know, his narrative. That's what makes him so appealing to a lot of largely racist, pro-police communities. But you know, there's a lot of conversation right now around sanctuary cities and protections and oversight and the sharing of information. And you know, just to say, all of that is effectively bullshit, right? We've brought up in the past how, you know, post 9/11, the federal government cultivated this information sharing environment to enforce interagency collaboration, or rather nurture that. And so we know that LAPD, whatever information they gather in a city that is largely undocumented, is accessible to federal agencies through fusion centers. But even when we think about upcoming events, right, like the Super Bowl is coming up again, World Cup, the Olympics, that these are events that will invite and nurture relationships and collaborations with LAPD and ICE to patrol cities, to do local enforcement. And we saw that in 2021. And so a lot of these codifications that are coming down the pipeline in City Hall, whether they're sanctuary city ordinances or tighter restrictions on LAPD, they're ineffective. Well, they do have an effect. They have a purpose, and that is to sanitize the violence that will inevitably come from this police department. And so a lot of that is sanitized through this legislation, but it's also bolstered by the words that we're hearing today. It's a culture that'll permeate this department. It's a culture that's always underlying and existent in the bias that the LAPD perpetuates, but now it's become an outright mission. And so I just say that to say we should really anticipate that violence more and more, and an escalation of that violence. Not that it can be fixed in any way. Secondly, I want to talk about there's a donation for a drone on the agenda today. And, you know, the LAPD touts its kind of drone usage policies and even their drone acquisition policies. There's a lot of conversation right now about AB 481, how city council and other agents or other kind of bodies have to oversee what the LAPD acquires. When we look at, you know, AB 481, the law is supposed to allow city leaders to only approve these technologies if such equipment, if the city is able to justify having such equipment. That's kind of bullshit. This department has never done that. When this department was trying to get the robot dog, the quadruped unmanned ground vehicle, the $278,000 robot, it talked about how it didn't have technology to operate indoors, right? That's effectively what a drone does, and this department has always had drones to begin with. So it's just really an opportunity for the department to lie and to expand their resources and get more toys to expand their budget allocation.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mona M.
Good afternoon. All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Welcome to the new chief. Jim Jones, Weinstein, P. Daddy, Danny Masterson. All the victims came to you. You didn't listen. I've been trying to warn you about abuses happening to children for over 6 months now. Others have been here too. There's one being fair gamed right now, evidenced manufactured to make it look like he is calling in swattings to himself because he has been brave enough to speak the truth about Scientology. Scientology is like the priest, wearing beautiful robes, giving blessings to his congregation, having Christmas pageants, Christmas parades, but behind closed doors, violating children. Scientology has, is, and will continue to violate children until you stop it. The words, please do something before it's too late, is too late. You don't need to have a SWAT team kick down the doors to catch them in the act. The evidence of people with injuries is abound. We have a list of over 200 of those folks. Scientology abuses children, families, and is like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Janet Wieland, I'm going to name names, needs to be removed from any CPAB board until further notice. Remember what every Scientologist is told every time they do a session. This is a quote. While we cannot guarantee you that matters revealed in this list will be held forever secret, we can promise you faithfully that no part of it nor any answer you make here will be given to the police. No Scientologist will ever bear witness against you in court. I also offer services to add curriculum to your training for recruits and continuing education for all of LAPD. Let's work together to keep our children safe. I would ask for contact information to talk with the chief personally. Thank you. Kids cannot consent. I yield back my time.
The next speaker is Hamid Khan.
So I just want to pick up on where Matios left on this whole sham of sanctuary city and the ordinance that was passed, because this is to further codify the Los Angeles Administrative Code. And it's interesting to note that when it was voted on, and as it's adding Chapter 19 to Division 19 of the LAAC to prohibit, and this is where it is, to prohibit city resources, including property and personnel, from being utilized for immigration enforcement or for cooperation with the federal immigration agents. So now that's exactly the issue that we've been talking about when we go to the Joint Regional Intelligence Center or the Fusion Center, and various forms of, through LEAP and other forms of information sharing environment. The information by itself is being made available, and LAPD is participating in immigration enforcement just by being present and as a partner of a federally funded Department of Homeland Security funded fusion center in Norwalk to begin with, and various other types of formations. The second thing is, it's not just how the information is going to move, the very tools that are being used, which brings me to the budget as well, about the expansion of the real-time crime centers, and have 2 of those, in addition to the ACCICs and the old CSOCs and various other systems. And then you have expansion of license plate readers. So now Flock Safety, which is a license plate ALPR delivers, they have direct contracts with the FBI, and they have a function where they can identify undocumented immigrants just by virtue of all the information that is out there. So now, whether the LAPD picks up the phone or sends it to them, or as they're using their license plate readers and they're scanning the information, the FBI and Homeland Security can gather all that information. So I think it's not just whether you sign on to a dotted line, whether you sign on to an agreement. It is just by virtue of how on autopilot information sharing is baked in, and how it's on autopilot information is going to go, whether Jim McDonald's wants to do it or he doesn't want to do it. And with all the claims that they have guardrails and all of that, there are no goddamn guardrails. That's exactly what we've been trying to say with how data-driven policing operates. Through all of these various mechanisms, through all of these various, which we call the stalker state, streams of information that are going through various systems. I mean, you have even something that would come across as benign, the Department of Children and Family Services and Child Protection, how deeply they are within that system as well. So the LAPD continues and will be on the front line, which will result in undocumented people's information being shared by the LAPD, because it's generated by the LAPD and all the tools. So unless the license plate readers are shut down, unless social media surveillance is shut down, you have social network analysis, and you are the main perpetrators of that violence and giving that information.
Next, we have Philip Tabby.
Good morning, all items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chief McDonald. Good morning, commissioners. It's refreshing as a civilian to see a new chief who has the experience and knowledge to lead the best police department in the nation. During this Thanksgiving week, I am thankful that we are headed in the right direction. First Book of Corinthians 15:57. But thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Chief McDonald, I believe we need to bring back God into the LAPD, just like God needs to be put back into our schools. I feel that a prayer needs to be said at every roll call. These past 5 years, there's been a lot of prayer and uncertainty among your officers, but it's time, Chief, for you to lead that prayer. We have lost many great officers to retirement and transfers because of the lack of morals and values this department is expected to hold. Bring God back into our stations, and good morals and values are sure to follow. We have also lost great officers like Mike McMahon, who was terminated for failing to comply with an illegal vaccine mandate. Nuremberg 2.0 is just around the corner, crimes against humanity. Nevertheless, LAPD needs to ditch this mandate ASAP if you want to ever recruit and retain larger number of officers. To our officers out there, hold the line. The majority appreciate you and will not give up fighting for you since you fight for us every single day. You are the thin blue line. The thin blue line is not racist or sexist. It is not black or white. I was told police officers only bleed blue. Let's get back to the real police work and not let politics dictate this great department. This may sound a bit funny, but I think watching the classic TV series Adam 12 should be mandatory for all recruits. The problem is sin, not skin, and the answer is grace, not race. Jesus died for all. Our nation needs him. This city needs him. I hope everyone and their families enjoy this Thanksgiving holiday. May God bless the LAPD. I yield the rest of my time.
The next speaker is Jonathan Foster. And he is the last in-person speaker.
Hello, Jonathan Foster. It's back to the dark ages. I see you hired Barney Rubble from the Flintstones as chief of police. And a few one-liners. I guess you're going to have Teresa Sanchez as a commissioner. The next line, I am not a Trump person. I'm a Republican, but I don't like the Don at all. I saw on YouTube, next one, I saw on YouTube a 1978 East LA gangs video, and it had a caption of the street McDonald Avenue, and I thought that was kind of amazing. Lane splitting is illegal always because it's dangerous. So the stuff I was talking about last time that I didn't get to is you didn't support Deputy Chief David March, killed by an illegal alien. You didn't support Deputy Sheriff Jerry Ortiz, shot by illegal alien. You don't support the police department. You didn't support the sheriffs. Nobody does the right thing. I agree that the Fed is a poop hole. They're no help. They're a bunch of scofflaws. They also killed David March and Jerry Ortiz. Okay? And the thing about Jose Espinoza turning these people over to ICE is that Jose Espinoza, if he was deported, he'd still be walking freely. He'd be a free man. And most importantly, Jamil Shaw Jr. would still be alive. How much money do you got? Not enough to bring anybody back to life. You're as dead as those people over there. And if you deport people to Mexico, Mom can send the dollars back to Mexico because they spend better over there. So let's talk about this one.
Produced a firearm and fired at the officers. This resulted in the officer-involved shooting. Both officers were struck by gunfire.
So these officers were struck by gunfire, and then we had this.
We have had no officer-involved shootings or categorical uses of force during the past 2-week period.
And that's me clapping back there. I'll still clap for that. That's really good. But what I had realized is that Eileen is a jerk and is focused on the wrong things, is focused on a few things maybe she can get done for mankind, but she didn't prevent these officers from getting shot. And the officers did not protect themselves, nor did the PPL, nor did any policy of McDonald. You didn't protect them either. They got shot. The only one protecting the officers is me, Jonathan Douglas Foster. I am the only one on earth protecting police officers, and no one will listen. And they talk about 2 weeks, 2 weeks of no shooting and de-escalation and all this kinds of stuff. Do you know, and I wrote this back here, do you know that the LAPD was never going to do this? The only reason the LAPD is doing this is because the protesters spoke up and made the LAPD stop shooting people, made the LAPD de-escalate. The LAPD, the police, were never going to do this because the handbook has to be rewritten.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Audit LA.
You're practically worthless. The last 10 sheets are practically worthless. And the sheriff.
Good morning. I want to ditto everything that Mona and Amy said. And I want to say this, I thank the officers and the community that came together to save that young man from suicide. I'm grateful. But I also want to reiterate that there were two girls, and I've come to this committee in person and the commission in person to talk about these two girls, and you did take a report about it because we want a wellness check. But the community came together for them, but I believe the police failed them, and then the community, because they turn out to be anti-Scientology protesters, were turned into the bad guys. We're the bad guys because we care about these children. I also want to say that I've also come and complained about how Hollywood Division and Northeast Division are in complete a marriage to the cult of Scientology. This new Hollywood initiative in Hollywood, which it's LAPD with the cult of Scientology. Even though we have provided so much evidence of collusion and an improper relationship between LAPD and especially Hollywood Division and the cult of Scientology, it should not be allowed to continue. Especially with all, like Mona was saying, there's hundreds of people who have survived and have come forward who are not being listened to. There's people who have had help signs inside. There's just, and not only that, they are also breaking the laws with all these illegal planters and all these other abuses just on a city level in city government. They've been told to remove stuff, and they double down and plant, like with all these planters that they've been ordered to remove, they put poinsettias in them. And this is what you're, and then they sent, and then they have Northeast Division, 6 officers, five, well, I think it was 5 officers in 3 cars, come and enforce the red zone to get rid of one of the protesters, who is parked there. Okay, like since when does LAPD enforce parking zones? I could see if there was something going on, a parade and somebody's parked there, but no, this was just Scientology didn't want this protester there. And it was funny because it was just minutes after I had spoken to DOT claiming that it's a fake, that they basically probably painted the red zone, or it was fake because there's no proof that it's a real red zone, on L. Ron Hubbard Way. And then all of a sudden, all these officers come to remove him. It's just, they're at the beck and call. It needs to stop. It's these two, it just needs to stop. And as far as the money, I said before, I want you to get donations. It relieves the taxpayers, but there needs to be transparency. Absolutely. You have to let us know who's donating the money through the foundation. It's not fair because it can create this kind of.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Mirjam.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes. I would like to draw your attention on the professional scale human trafficking operation, which is run by the Church of Scientology. In 2015, my friend was trafficked from Denmark to Los Angeles to the Big Blue Scientology building on L. Ron Hubbard Way. He arrived on a short-term visa, followed with a paper from cult explaining he was to be a short-term religious volunteer. In reality, there was never no intention to ever let him return to Denmark. He soon realized that he was risking of becoming an illegal immigrant in USA. After begging daily for 2 months to be sent back to Denmark, the cult finally gave in and returned him back. As a punishment, upon his return, he was performing forced hard physical labor, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, for several months. And he was lucky, as many of his friends who went with a temporary visa have never returned back from the US and are currently doing their 1 billion year tenure for cult of Scientology as illegal immigrants. Please look into the human trafficking crimes of this cult. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Andrew Gravener.
All right, I will speak to all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
All right, starting off with the chief's report given today by the guy who was elected out as LA County Sheriff and has since never won an election again, but yet was recommended to you anyway by the city. You recommended anyway to city council, and the city council approved anyway, despite everyone opposing him. So the chief's report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting. If the chief's report exceeds 3 minutes, we should be able to match the amount of time the chief takes. Regardless of how long the chief takes, everyone should be able to speak both in person and on the phone. LAPD is shooting and killing people again. Just so much violence the LAPD keeps committing. We got people, they keep doing these high-speed car chases. They're completely useless and pointless. But you all know they're good for those TV ratings, and they keep killing people in those high-speed car chases. But again, the TV ratings. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. We have a number of really large donations today. And just keep doing these just funneling more money. We have $22,000 for media equipment, $21,000 for optics. Make it easier for you to shoot and kill people. No one all these donations. The optics of them are bad. We have $10,000 for car wash. We have $8,000 for the concert band. So once again, you reused you keep reusing agenda item file names. So it makes it hard if you forget to delete all of them, because then it thinks it's already on the device, and it makes it confusing. Today you reused 2 agenda file names on the same agenda. One of them, the massive budget. No on this budget proposal. The budget, you have so much money. You're literally bankrupting the city here with your violence and corruption, and yet you want more. You just apparently don't have enough money, despite already bankrupting the city here with your money, with your funding, so, and the amount of money you keep spending. And all your stuff keeps getting liability payouts, which is further bankrupting the city. You have an item related to the complaint process today. The last time I filed a complaint, it took like 8 months for them to refer it to a personal friend of the officers I was filing a report on, who claimed it didn't happen, even though I attached a video of it happening. Didn't even say it was in policy. No, it just didn't happen because, even though I've attached a video of it happening.
Thank you. Mr. President, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 3, consent agenda items. We have items A through F, and I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners if there are any questions on A through F. Vice President Shields?
None for me, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche? Thank you. The only comment I'd like to make is on 3A before we vote. It's regarding Topanga Division's community room and a donation from the Los Angeles Police Foundation for an upgrade. Several months ago, I requested before and after station upgrade photos. When we get these kinds of requests, and I'd like to just remind everyone that if they would share those photos with the Board of Police Commissioners when they're available, and I thank the foundation for their support. Having said that, I'd like to move that we adopt the recommendation for board action. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved in second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll now move on to item number 4, the regular agenda items. Item 4A is in Office of the Inspector General's verbal presentation relative to the complaint process. Okay. And Joey, are you solo today? Solo. Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Chief McDonald, Executive Director Sibley, Acting Assistant Inspector Yu, and Mr. De La Guerra. My name is Joseph Lapari. I'm the Acting Assistant Inspector General for the Complaints Section at the Office of the Inspector General. Today I'll be presenting on the Office of the Inspector General's role in the disciplinary process. This will be kind of a continuation or follow-up of the department's presentation from last week. So just by way of sort of introduction of the office and the section, I would just point out that the complaints section is one of 5 other sections in the department. The other 4 are use of force, the audit section, community relations, and our administrative section. Specifically for the complaints section, we have 7 police special investigators, 1 auditor, and then 1 one AIG, I should say. In addition to the regular responsibilities and duties of the complaints section, which I'll be spending most of this presentation on, I would just point out that in addition to those responsibilities, our section does occasionally put out public reports. If you remember, a couple years ago, we did the Board of Rights procedure report. We also have the upcoming bias policing, the complaints on bias policing report. So there are essentially 5 areas where the complaints section interacts with the disciplinary process for LAPD. And I'll just take you through those, each of those in some detail. But the 5 areas are the initial complaint intake. Our office does take in complaints. We do case reviews. Once an investigation is completed, our office can conduct a case review. If we find anything, any concerns with that, any deficiencies with the investigation, we can do what we call a kickback to the department and request additional investigation. We also attend the internal affairs case briefings every week. We also, on a weekly basis, the chief's disciplinary signings. And then finally, we conduct any investigations of allegations filed against the chief of police. And so I'll just take you through each one of those very briefly, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about our role in the process. So in terms of the intake, our intake role, we are an intake point for both the public and members of the department. We do accept anonymous complaints, again, either from the public or from officers. We do receive anonymous internal complaints from officers fairly regularly. But this being at the beginning of the process allows us to really track cases from the beginning, from once they're the point of being filed, all the way until the end. We do have direct access to all of the department's records, digital records, video, audio, anything that the department creates, we have direct, immediate access to that. So that's how we can conduct these case reviews or the investigations that we have to conduct as well. So we receive the complaint. Once we receive the complaint, we put together a 15-2 and then forward all of the information from that complaint to the Internal Affairs Division. The Internal Affairs Division will conduct or assign those investigations out throughout the department, with the exception of any allegations against the chief of police. If allegations are made against the chief, those get routed back to our office and we assign it to one of our investigators. So that's the intake process. Secondly, the case reviews and kickbacks, as I said, the IG's office can either identify any case either as it came into us as a complaint, or if we become aware of it in the course of the investigation, we can track that case to its completion. We can, on our own volition, decide to conduct a review of the case if we see any concerns with it. But we also accept requests from members of the public to conduct a case review. If they get their case is completed, their investigation is completed, they get a closeout letter. If they are unsatisfied with that outcome or think something wasn't addressed, they can request the case review with our office and we can conduct that. There's a one-year statute, as you all know, on complaints. Even if the one-year statute has been reached, our office can still make the decision to review a case, even if we know we can't impact the disciplinary outcome. We may see policy or training issues at play, and so that's why we would review it under that situation. For the sort of third role that we play, or third area where we play a role in the disciplinary process, are the case briefings. So every week Internal Affairs and Professional Standards Unit meets with the supervisors from that manage all of the internal affairs cases. Those supervisors come to this meeting. This is typically on a Monday afternoon. We get briefing sheets ahead of that meeting that have a description of the case, of the investigation, of what's been recommended by the local and area supervisors. The supervisors present those cases to Professional Standards Bureau and to the IG's office, and that's really our opportunity to weigh in on any of the disciplinary matters at stake. If we see any additional investigation that needs to be done, if we see any training that could come out of this, or policy matters, we can identify those. And in that meeting, Professional Standards Bureau, they develop their own recommendation for each case. And I should say these are all cases where something has been sustained and there's a disciplinary recommendation attached to it. So we're not reviewing every case, cases that have been closed with nothing sustained or no disciplinary findings. These are cases that are about to be discussed with the chief for disciplinary outcome. And so we, PSB, IAD, and the IG's office ask any questions of that investigating or that supervising investigator. If we find anything that requires additional investigation, we can request that they go back and do some additional investigation before presenting it to the chief. And then I should say PSB, Professional Standards Bureau, also develops their own recommendation for the chief. The next role is really like usually 2 days later, typically on a Wednesday afternoon, where we then, the supervising investigators present the cases again, this time with the chief of police in the room. That's an opportunity for the chief to ask any questions of the investigator, to get input from the command staff, to get input from the IG's office, and we will discuss in that meeting typically, hey, does this proposed discipline, is this consistent with the penalty guide? Is this consistent with past disciplinary practices? And the chief has a team there that provides that information to him. And then again, if the chief has any questions about the IG's perspective on any particular case, he'll ask our input, or we'll volunteer that input. But ultimately, and I should say the IG's office does not make specific disciplinary recommendations, whether it be 2 days or 5 days. We don't get into the sort of specific disciplinary recommendation, but we will identify if there's any gap in the investigation, if it's inconsistent with past discipline, we would point those sorts of things out. We'll also take a look at the framing of the allegations to make sure that they're framed accurately and that everything that should be framed has been framed. But at the end of that process, the chief makes the disciplinary decision on those cases after getting the input from command staff, from the IG's office, and from the supervisors as well, and from PSB. Again, our participation in this process really allows us, as I said, to track individual cases from the beginning to the end, to identify any troubling trends or any concerns that the commission may want to hear about, or any other matters that we feel need to be addressed. Our last role is actually conducting the investigations of the chief of police. And so this is, we have our own internal investigators, trained investigators, with extensive backgrounds in conducting investigations. They will be fully responsible for the entire investigation of the chief. They will frame the allegations. They will conduct the interview of the chief of police, of any witnesses. They'll get access to any digital records, any paper records they need from the department. But it's really run solely within the IG's office. Then our investigators put a report together on those cases of the investigations of the chief. And then, as you all know, you will all then receive those investigations. And then we'll present them to you in closed session. And the commission will make an adjudication on the investigation. This, is a standard, method that allows us to, and allows the commission to ensure that the investigations that they're receiving and that they're reviewing of the chief of police are independent. They haven't been conducted by his own staff or his own employees, and that to give the commission some assurance that there's no question that it'll be an independent and thorough investigation. I should also add that at the direction of the commission, this happens very occasionally, we can also conduct any investigations, other personnel investigations that you all see fit and direct us to do. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to my fellow commissioners. Vice President Shields.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I think it's very helpful for us and also the public to understand, what role the Office of Inspector General plays in this, and also department employees who may not know exactly how the process works. I had, a couple of questions. One is even backing up because, I know this, but at the same time, I think it's helpful for everyone to understand the role of the Inspector General. You do not report directly to the Chief of Police or to any department employee. Is that right?
That's correct. We report to the Board of Police Commissioners.
That's helpful to know kind of the division of, who's your boss, essentially.
That's right.
Thank you. And, one thing that you mentioned is about individuals who have had complaints completed by the department that those members of the public or others, employees, can ask for a case review by the Inspector General's office. How well is that ability or right known? And is that potentially, for the sake of potentially opening up a Pandora's box of more reviews, is that listed in the closeout letter that the department sends to a complainant?
On the second question, I'm not sure if it's listed in the closeout letter. We can double check that, and if it's not, I'm sure they would be happy to do that. I know there are occasions where the department will tell the individual who calls back the investigator and says, "Hey, I'm not happy with this." They will tell them that, "Hey, you can request a case review from the IG's office." Now, we will also on the front end, when we have complainants call us or write to us and express some hesitation with filing a complaint or lack of faith in the process, we will tell them up front that, hey, when you get to the end of this process, if you're unsatisfied with the outcome, come back to us, request a case review, and we can review that case for you and make an assessment of whether anything was missed or not.
Okay, great. Because it is one of those things where we can have a lot of great resources, but without people knowing about it, they may not ask. Right. But at the same end, if we do include that in a letter and you start getting bombarded with a lot of complaints, then we should know that so that we understand what resources you need for the Office of Inspector General to be able to address all of
Will
those.
do. Appreciate that, Commissioner.
Excuse me.
Yes.
As far as I'm aware, Internal Affairs and PSB recently added in their closeout letters that if the complainant is unsatisfied with the finding, they may reach out to our office. And to further add, our website includes that information that we also can conduct case reviews when complainants are unsatisfied.
Excellent, thank you. And I know there's a whole other section that does the community outreach.
That's
Maybe
right.
we could have another presentation by them as well.
Absolutely.
I have two more questions or one comment. One of the things that you had mentioned is about kind of like the briefings that you all receive as a complaint is going, and then also when it goes to the Chief of Police. And one of the things that you look at are kind of like past disciplinary practices. You're not there to say this person needs 5 days or 2 days or
Correct.
1 day. But are you also assessing, one of the complaints we had heard was about, command staff being treated differently than, say, rank and file officers. If you are in the room, are you also, you don't have a stake. You're not loyal to command staff. You're not loyal to rank and file officers. Do you have a sense of being able to gauge whether there's any unfairness or tipping of the scale one way or the other?
Specifically in cases that involve command staff, we are included in those discussions. We participate in them just like we do for regular officers. If we have concerns that we identify, we'll raise it in those meetings as well, just as we would for any other case. I think if we look at the history of discipline of command staff officials, we've seen some discipline in the past several years. So my sense of it is that it's a thorough process, and even when it's allegations against command staff, if there's evidence to sustain it, it gets sustained, and the appropriate discipline is carried out.
And you would be able to kind of voice a concern if you're seeing, say, too much leniency on the command staff. If you had a very similar conduct by rank and file, you would be voicing that in those types
We
of.
would absolutely raise that. And we do look at the history of the officers, past sustained complaints, and so that can sometimes affect how the outcome of a case. But we would absolutely review that and speak to
Excellent.
that.
Thank you. And I would just say that I welcome more reports in this
They're coming.
area. And I think that it's very important. Again, you all do a lot of work there, and it's important for us to see it and also for the public to know what you are doing. And again, if there are additional resources that need to be had so that we have more regular reporting or other things like that, then I'm very supportive of that. But thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Commissioner Shields, for the follow-up questions. I have a couple of additional kind of clarifying questions. One is, well, a simple one. Where and how does the public or anyone file a complaint? Like, where do you start?
So they can start really at whatever point is most convenient, whatever location or place is most convenient for them. If they feel more comfortable going directly to the police department, they can do that, and they can do that through a website. They can call internal affairs. They can go directly to a police station to file a complaint with a front desk. If they feel uncomfortable interacting with the police department, they can come directly to our office. We take walk-ins. They can send us an email. We have a form posted up on our website. They can complete that form. But it's not even required to complete the form. You can just send us an email with the information, and we will take the complaint from there.
So if someone walks into a police station, usually we're thinking that filing a complaint is with internal affairs.
Not necessarily, no.
So how would they distinguish that, right?
So, any police officer is required to take a complaint if a member of the public asks to provide a complaint to them. So if you're out on the street within an interaction, you can request a supervisor, and that supervisor will come there and take your complaint. If you think of it after the interaction, you can drive down, you can go to the police station yourself, go to the front desk, and they will take your complaint there. Occasionally, we will have sort of complaints against officers who do fail to take the complaints, and that is a disciplinary matter. It becomes an investigation, and it becomes potential discipline for the officer if they do not take that complaint when a person requests to file a complaint with them.
So when the complaint is taken at, say, a station with LAPD, does it go to you? Does it go through a parallel track with internal affairs and the Office of Inspector General, or?
No, if it didn't
What is the
come in
process?
through us directly to our office and it just went through the police department, it would just go directly to internal affairs. They would process it and route it to the appropriate entity. Now, if it involved a complaint against the chief of police, then it would get routed back to our office.
Okay. So when citizens are filing a complaint, it goes to internal affairs, and then there's a
If they
point-
didn't file it directly with us. They could also, if they feel uncomfortable with that, let us know that they filed the complaint with internal affairs, and then that would let us, track it from the beginning.
Okay, that's important clarification that you could just go through the process of like walking into a station or filing a complaint with whomever officer stops
Absolutely.
you. Or you can go directly to the OIG's office.
That's right,
And it
yep.
goes through the similar process. Okay,
Correct.
that's an important clarification. The other, I think, big question, just I think for ourselves, we kind of know a little bit about the process, but for the public is understanding the role of the OIG's office in the Board of Rights process. Right, if you can just explain a little bit about our role there, or your role there.
So, I wasn't a part of that report, but I'll talk
Well, I
about it
think 'cause
anyway.
that's like a big elephant in the room, because that's kind
Sure.
of been a discussion. I don't know, I think,
So, with respect to the IG's role in the Board of Rights process, we have the ability to sit in and monitor any Board of Rights. We also participate in rewriting the Board of Rights manual and the hearing examiner's manual. With respect to the Commission's role in the Board of Rights process, the Commission is the entity responsible for hiring all these civilian hearing examiners. In any event, should certain cases rise to the level where the IG's office or the commission deems important enough for us to go monitor the events, we will be there in person, keeping track of the whole Board of Rights process. Subsequent to that, the findings of the board is presented to the chief of police during case signings, and the IG's office is here to receive information with respect to what the recommendation is made by the Board of Rights, whereupon we can either report it to the commission or request that the Professional Standards Bureau report it to the commission.
Perfect. I think that's really important to know that there is a role, right? Because that's been a big discussion. The Board of Rights has been a big discussion. And I think it's important for the public to know that the Inspector General's office does have a role, whether it's direct or indirect.
And then just recently, I think you may be aware that the City Council has asked the Board of Police Commissioners and the Office of the Inspector General and the department to review its disciplinary process, including a review of the current Board of Rights process. And so we'll be playing another role in moving that along.
Perfect. Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And both Vice President Shields and Commissioner Kalanche hit on this, but in your earlier slide, you mentioned, I believe there were 4 different areas of the OIG's office. One was community relations. What does that outreach look like?
So it's a 2-person staff. They will, on behalf of the IG, they will arrange meetings with community groups. They will assist arranging presentations. Oh, and we have one of our, the head of our community relations section here who could give you a much better answer than I could.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the intro to answering the question, but we do a whole host of outreach and meetings consisting of outreach to internal stakeholders within the city and external stakeholders outside of the city. Those community meetings are a little bit on hold right now while we wait for a new Inspector General. But normally we have a set rotation of different community groups that we rotate around to try to just get a sense of what their concerns are with regard to LAPD and how they'd like to see the department sort of take the next step in terms of community relations.
Excuse me, can you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Julie Buchwald.
Thank you.
Special investigator with the Office of the Inspector General.
And so in your engagement with those community groups, are we also reaching out to all the council districts as well?
Yes, absolutely. Anytime there's a new council member, we reach out to that office and make sure we have direct lines of communication. That's been especially crucial in the past, I'd say, year, since there have been an increased number of council motions coming our way to respond to.
Thank you, Vice President Shields.
I'll just say, the commission is diligently working to fill the Inspector General role, and thank you, the Acting Inspector General, for your patience through that process. But I will say, I think, this is such an important thing, and community outreach doesn't have to stay on hold while we're undergoing that process. So encourage the office to continue doing the outreach. I know around the holidays it's a little trickier, but to the extent there are opportunities to attend, community meetings, or if you want any of the commissioners to attend community meetings with you, please let us know. Thank you.
Oh, definitely.
I have a follow-up when you're done. I have a follow-up.
Commissioner Kalanche, go ahead.
Sorry. Do we have a process, or do we get any complaints from young people, like youth under 18?
Sure, we get complaints. We accept those just like we would for anyone else, process them as we would anyone else. There's no age limit. We will sometimes have parents file complaints with their children. That'll happen occasionally as well.
Important part of the process as well of outreach, reaching out to organizations that serve teens. They tend to have more interaction, obviously, than younger youth, but interaction with law enforcement. So I think that would be important as part of the outreach strategy.
Yeah, we're always cognizant of invitations from youth groups and specifically just anyone with a stake in more contacts with the department, perhaps than not. And also, I was going to say, as part of our outreach efforts, we always include an overview of what Joey referred to as far as the complaint process. We try to make it as simple as possible for people to understand, but it includes how to file a complaint, the fact that they can contact our office in any number of ways to conduct a case review after the fact if they're unhappy with the result of their investigation when it's completed.
Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, again, I'd like to just echo the comments of Vice President Shields. We are nearing the end of an exhaustive nationwide search for the Inspector General, and we do hope to name that individual soon. But thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the report. And as was mentioned previously, do not slow down because of the process in terms of the Inspector General selection. That's going to happen very quickly. Okay. Thank you. We'll now move on to regular agenda item 4B, Department's report relative to the destruction of firearms. And I have Director Rhodes. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I am pleased to be joined by Senior Management Analyst John Galitzin from the Evidence and Property Management Division. As I think the Commission knows, the legislature in California, especially during sort of between June and early October, passes legislation. Oftentimes that legislation is to go into effect January 1st. Sometimes there is quite large reforms to be had, and other times the legislature asks that all departments put something in their manual that, for instance, the LAPD is already doing. This is the latter. The legislature passed 3 bills, Assembly Bill 2739, 2842, and Senate Bill 1019, discussing destruction of firearms, and specifically included a definition of how they must be destroyed, which is by smelting, shredding, crushing, or cutting all parts of the firearms, including any attachment. This is what Los Angeles Police Department has done, and will continue to do, but it was necessary, according to the legislation, to put it into the manual, which we have now done. So if there are any questions between the two of us, I hope we are happy to answer those.
Well, Director Rose, thank you for the clarification. And Vice President Shields, any questions?
I think the only question I have, and my understanding is that there's a prohibition on, selling firearms by the department. Is that correct? So that if they're being destroyed in lieu of being sold. Is that
That's
accurate?
correct, and that was already done, yes.
And so how do we identify, so this is kind of like after there's already been a decision that this firearm is going to be destroyed, then this is the action that occurs, how to go about doing the destruction. Is there anything that describes how do you identify what needs to be destroyed?
So as part of the existing statute, something that is not required to be retained by the district attorney or a court order in the interests of justice, and therefore goes into destruction after a certain amount of time. Additionally, a stolen firearm, so if for instance, a firearm got stolen from your home and then was found later in the possession of someone else, there is a requirement that the lawful owner be notified about that stolen firearm and be given an amount of time to respond to that notification if we can determine whose firearm it was. So those are 2 other points. But in terms of destruction, this is the practice already. The protocols are in place, and now it is written in our policy.
And the bill or the new law only requires us to put into the policy how to go about destroying the firearms. Is that right?
Specifically, how destruction is defined, so that there are no part of it that can be reconstituted into a firearm.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Calanche. Director Rhodes, just a technical question. So let's say, for instance, we have a firearm that's used in some extremely noteworthy incident, and it's going to be retained for the LA Police Museum, what would make that exception happen, and who would make that decision?
So I believe certainly we could apply for a court order because it's a fairly broad definition in the statute of, and I want to get the words exactly right so that I don't say the wrong thing. But it's necessary or proper to the ends of justice. So I think that can encompass a large range of things.
Thank you. And if there are no other questions or comments, I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action and approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the final regular agenda item, continued from last week, department's report relative to the 25-26 proposed budget. And we have Police Administrator Rhodes and Unziker? No? I'm sorry. And I'm looking at Anne Marie and saying Rhodes. Sorry about that. Okay, Police Administrator Sauer and Unziker.
Yep.
And again, I'd like to reiterate our thanks for you meeting with us in compliance with the Brown Act so that we could all have conversations about this extensive document leading up to our decision, as well as coming here last week. And so with that, I don't know that we need another introduction, but what I'd like to do is start with Commissioner Kalanche if she has any questions or comments about the budget.
Thank you. Again, thank you for meeting with us and going through the budget with us individually to be able to ask questions. So many of my questions and clarifications have been asked. So a quick question right now would be, is the budget that we saw, that we discussed, has anything changed from, say, even last week to this week? Right.
No, there have been no changes from last week to this week. It's the same budget as we briefed on last week, the same priorities that we discussed, that the mayor's office approved on both the deputy mayor, the policy side and the budget side.
Perfect. So if you could just go through a brief summary of like the process and next steps for this budget, that it doesn't like end here.
Correct.
Right?
It does not end here. So we will, upon approval, submit it to the mayor and the CAO. We will then go through a process of answering a lot of questions, kind of go back and forth. We have our subject matter experts here who are a big part of this, and so it sort of becomes a department effort to respond to questions. Ultimately, the mayor needs to present her budget on or before April 20th to be in compliance with the charter. And then, as I always say, sort of the city council has their bite at the apple. So first, the Budget and Finance Committee. So the chief will appear before the committee, and we will kind of react to what the mayor has presented. Then it will go before the full council. And again, same thing through all of that, a lot of kind of back and forth, answering questions. And then ultimately, we will have a budget adopted by the council on June 1st that goes into effect on July 1st of 2025.
And once you submit this budget and it goes to the mayor, and the mayor starts possibly asking for changes, does that come back to us for at least a conversation, or are we like out of that process?
This is sort of the point where it's within your purview, but once we go across the street, I mean, then it is the mayor and the council ultimately. So she presents her budget, and then it's the council.
So this is our shot.
This is our shot, yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for explaining that. I think it's really important for the public to know the different steps that the budget will go through, and that we are just one step in the process.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you for that, yeah.
Thank you. If there are no additional questions or comments, Vice President Shields, go ahead.
Sure. I just had a couple. One thing that I think is helpful to know, we just had a presentation with the Office of Inspector General, and some folks may not understand that this budget is for the, LAPD, but that also encompasses the oversight involved with the LAPD. So it also includes the budget for the Office of Inspector General and also for the Police Commission. Now, we do not get paid, let's be clear, but we do have staff that do, have a paid. So that would fall into the salaries of all of this. So this is encompassing everything. One thing I will say, I'm very appreciative of the process this year, in comparison to last year. I definitely have had more time and understanding and conversations around why each of these expenditures is necessary. I will say, just in terms of an improvement for next year, I want to make sure that the Office of Inspector General has an opportunity, if they hadn't already, provide additional resources that they would need. As we endeavor to, hire a new Inspector General, I want to make sure that that person has all the resources and needs to meet everything that we envision the oversight to really be involved in. So, and I understand they sometimes run across some budgeting problems, and that's because it's all encompassed in this budget. So I just ask that they be more involved next year to account for anything that they need. The other thing I will say, if the city council wants to cut out 3.3 million, I'd be happy for them to forego the hotel and short-term rental ordinance compliance. This is something that neither the commission nor the department have asked for in terms of having to actually undergo this ordinance, but in order for the department to comply with it, these funds are going to be necessary. And it's just really, to me, when you look at the cost of that ordinance versus some of the other, it's almost two real-time crime centers, which is a lot of money here. And so, again, these are things, a lot of times the department is, criticized for asking for more and more money. But this is a very good example of how more and more responsibilities is thrust upon the department, whether or not they are the right, avenue for this. So just wanted to highlight that and give an opportunity. If there's a place to cut, that's where I'd start. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Vice President Shields. And with that, I would move that we approve the department's report and transmit to the mayor and the city administrative officer. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think it's also important to share that we didn't get any feedback via email or comments via email. I think that's really important.
Thank you. That's true. Thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that point up. The commission will now recess into closed session. Thank you.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 5A, 1, 2, and 3, and 5B in accordance with Government Code 54957.
The commission has concluded closed session. We'll have a readout by Executive Director Sibley. Mr. Sibley?
Thank you, Mr. President. So the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on November 26, 2024, during the closed session, the board made the following findings by a 3-0 vote on 5A1, non-tactical unintentional discharge, case number 070-23. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 Sergeant 1. And for unintentional discharge, negligent discharge, administrative disapproval, 1 Sergeant 1. For item 5A2, also by a 3-0 vote, the Commission made the following findings. This is carotid restraint control hold 071-23. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 3 and 1 police officer 1. For non-lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 3 and 1 police officer 1. And for lethal use of force, out of policy, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer 1. And then for item 5B1, the matter was discussed, and that concludes the report out.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I move that we adjourn today's meeting. Is there a second?
Second?
Moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Have a very happy Thanksgiving.